On certain nights, reality seems to stretch beyond what the eyes can bear. Things remain in the same place, yet something pulses differently, as if an invisible field were silently arranging the details. Perhaps you have already felt this subtle vibration, an unlikely synchronicity, an unexpected encounter, an answer arriving before the question. These moments are not mere coincidences, but signs of a deeper order that sustains the universe, an order that science calls quantum coherence. In physics, this term describes the ability of particles to remain connected, resonating like an orchestra of invisible frequencies. When in coherence, they do not behave as separate individuals, but as a single dancing body. Curiously, this same logic applies to human consciousness. Misaligned emotions fragment us, but tuned thoughts and feelings generate a field of clarity so intense that it changes the way reality responds to us. It is not only about inner balance. It is about a vibrational engineering capable of reorganizing probabilities. The heart, when beating in harmony with the mind, emits electrical and magnetic patterns that interfere with the quantum fabric of space. It is as if the universe listened to this secret music and responded by adjusting life's scenarios. In this video, we will traverse this enigmatic territory, from science to metaphors, from discoveries to exercises that transform theory into experience. The path is dense, but each step will reveal that coherence is not just an inner state, but a creative power capable of redesigning the very reality we inhabit. Quantum coherence is not just a technical concept confined to laboratories. It describes the condition in which particles, even when separated by considerable distances, remain united in the same vibrational pattern. This state is so delicate that it can be undone by the slightest external disturbance. But while it remains active, it reveals something extraordinary. Reality can be sustained by invisible connections, deeper than the logic of separation. On the microscopic scale, electrons and photons cease to obey the model of independent solid objects. They begin to act like musical notes within the same chord. They are not isolated entities, but vibrations that only make sense within a set. This scientific view breaks the usual narrative of a mechanical universe, where each part would function independently. On the contrary, it shows us that everything may be immersed in the same cosmic breath, where even the slightest oscillation resonates in the whole. Now transfer this logic to the human field. The body, mind, and heart are systems that constantly produce electrical and magnetic signals. The heart, for example, emits the most powerful electromagnetic field of the body, and its influence can be measured several meters away. This field is not static. It expands and reorganizes according to the emotional state. Disharmonious emotions create incoherent, chaotic patterns that hinder both mental clarity and physical vitality. Harmony between emotion and thought, on the other hand, generates an ordered field with waves that align like concentric circles on water. Science has already demonstrated that this cardiac coherence directly influences the nervous system, immune function, and even time perception. The brain responds differently when the heart beats in sync with a balanced emotional state. It is as if the mind received a more stable network to process information, reducing internal noise and expanding intuition. This interaction between heart and brain creates a condition in which the individual not only feels peace, but becomes capable of influencing external reality. But what would be the bridge between this internal state and the quantum field? The answer lies in the nature of the universe itself. Modern physics suggests that reality is a dance of probabilities, a multiplicity of possibilities awaiting the presence of an observer to condense into form. Each choice of attention functions as a wave collapse, defining which version of the world will become tangible. In this scenario, coherence works as an amplifier. An aligned internal system emits clearer signals to the field of possibilities, strengthening certain realities over others. It is important to realize that this is not a spiritualized metaphor. Several experiments show that particles in superposition remain correlated, as if responding to the same secret order. By extrapolating this principle, one understands that a human being in internal coherence is literally in dialogue with this invisible fabric, offering a vibrational signature that reorganizes the surrounding matter. Reality in this sense ceases to be a fixed stage and reveals itself as a plastic, malleable network that responds to each individual's degree of inner harmony. This hidden power is not immediate, nor should it be confused with a simplistic form of positive thinking. It is a sustained state in which body, mind, and emotion align as parts of the same quantum organism. Coherence does not arise from repressing feelings, but from the ability to integrate them until they vibrate in the same direction. It is in this integration that previously scattered energy concentrates, becoming capable of altering behavioral patterns, interpersonal relationships, and even seemingly external circumstances. Some describe this process as the tuning of an instrument. A violin out of tune may still produce sounds, but it causes discomfort. When precisely tuned, however, it can transform a room into a stage of beauty. In the same way, internal coherence tunes the frequency we emit to the universe. This tuning is not merely aesthetic, it is creative. Life begins to organize itself according to this ordered field, revealing opportunities that were once hidden. It is at this point that science and spirituality meet. While physics shows us the invisible foundations of an interconnected cosmos, ancient traditions have always affirmed that the human heart holds the key to dialogue with creation. Today, we understand that this was not merely a poetic metaphor, but an accurate description of a real phenomenon, coherence as a force that stitches consciousness into the very fabric of the universe. If inner coherence works like the tuning of a violin, we can think of the human being as a constellation of instruments playing together. Each thought is a breath, each emotion a drum, each heartbeat a deep string sustaining the rhythm. When these sounds are misaligned, the result is noise, like an orchestra in a confused rehearsal. But the moment they all adjust to the same tempo, a symphony is born, capable of moving not only the body, but also the surrounding space. This musical metaphor helps us intuitively understand the phenomenon, but it does not exhaust the mystery. Coherence can also be seen as the movement of the tides. The ocean does not decide to move in fragments. It responds in unison to the pull of the moon, creating waves that travel across continents. Likewise, the human field in coherence does not act only in small areas of the body, but reverberates like an invisible tide that alters both internal physiology and external circumstances. Think of a flame flickering in the wind. If several candles are lit in the same space, each trembles independently, creating luminous disorder. But when they are shielded from the wind and begin to flicker in the same rhythm, they produce a continuous, intense, almost solid light. Coherence works as this subtle protection, a state that allows our multiple expressions to vibrate in the same rhythm, without dispersion. This light is not just a metaphor. The human body, in coherence, emits stronger electromagnetic patterns, capable of synchronizing even the field of other nearby people. It is no coincidence that in collective gatherings marked by states of deep prayer or meditation, a different atmosphere is often perceived in the environment. This is not psychological suggestion, but the sum of coherent fields creating a tangible energetic matrix. Science is beginning to measure these effects, while spiritual traditions have always experienced them. Coherence is not only individual, it can expand as a network that connects consciousnesses like circular waves, meeting and amplifying the movement of water. But this alignment does not arise from rigid control. It flourishes from recognizing the scattered parts within us. Repressed emotions are like untuned instruments hidden backstage. They keep vibrating, even if one tries to ignore them. The process of reaching coherence is less about domination and more about integration, allowing fear, anger, joy, and compassion to recognize themselves as different notes of the same scale. Instead of forcing silence, it is about allowing dialogue. Symbolic practices can help make this process more tangible. Close your eyes for a moment and bring to mind the image of a deep river. Each emotion that arises in you is a stone thrown into this river. In incoherent states, each stone creates chaotic waves that clash with one another, making the surface turbulent. But as you breathe slowly and allow thoughts to settle, the stones begin to sink, and the river returns to a continuous flow. This visualization is not mere imagination. It translates how brain and heart patterns can align through a balanced breathing rhythm. Another symbolic exercise is to feel the heart as a living furnace. With each inhalation, air becomes fuel. With each exhalation, the flame stabilizes. Gradually, this inner fire becomes regular, radiating warmth throughout the body. This active metaphor not only stimulates imagination, but also activates physiological circuits that respond to focused attention on the heart. Science calls this induced cardiac coherence, a state in which conscious breathing adjusts heart rate variability, generating balance throughout the organism. Notice how symbolic practice works on two levels. On the one hand, it gives the brain concrete images to organize the experience. On the other, it awakens real physiological effects, proven by scientific measurements. The metaphor becomes a tool for transformation. By associating coherence with strong images, river, fire, tide, orchestra, the body responds as if actually living these experiences. The boundary between metaphor and reality dissolves, revealing that both share the same vibrational ground. At this point, we begin to grasp the depth of the theme. Coherence is not an abstract idea, but a daily practice that can be evoked through symbols, rhythms, and states of attention. Each metaphor is like a key that opens a different inner door. By experimenting with these keys, we discover that external reality also begins to respond in a more ordered way, as if conducted by the same invisible maestro. So far, we have spoken of coherence as tuning, tide, or protected flame. But what if this perspective is still timid in the face of the real power it carries? Because it is not only about feeling more inner peace or organizing scattered thoughts. Coherence is capable of redesigning the very gears of reality, modifying the field of probabilities in which events unfold. The rupture happens when we understand that reality is not outside of us as a fixed stage. The world is not a distant stage, but a living organism that responds to our internal state. What we call chance may, in large part, be the repercussion of the frequencies we emit. The shock lies precisely here. The universe is not neutral, it is sensitive. Each coherent vibration you sustain is like an invisible seed sown in the quantum field, determining which versions of life will materialize before you. This idea challenges the traditional view of cause and effect. We are used to thinking that first events happen, and then we react to them. But coherence reveals that the movement can be the reverse. First, we align body, emotion, and mind, and then reality adjusts in response. It is like watching a play in which the stage lights up only at the exact moment someone decides to look at that part of the scene. Without the gaze, the scene remains invisible, suspended. The paradox is unsettling. We have always believed that we are the result of the world, children of circumstances, shaped by chance and external forces. But what if it is the other way around? What if reality is in part the offspring of our frequency? This turning point is not a motivational metaphor, but a real possibility supported by quantum physics. Coherent systems exert influence on how matter organizes itself. The human being, upon entering this state, ceases to be just a spectator and becomes a co-author of creation. It is at this point that the hidden power of alignment arises. Living in coherence does not mean denying the chaos of life, but operating on a layer where even chaos finds harmony. The heart emits rhythmic patterns that, in resonance with the mind, become a kind of command field. The body ceases to be fragmented and becomes an antenna. The universe, in turn, does not resist this state. It responds with synchronicities, shortcuts, encounters that accelerate paths. It is not magic, but a forgotten natural technology. This revelation demands responsibility. Because upon understanding that coherence is creative power, it no longer makes sense to passively wait for the world to organize itself. Each breath, each emotional choice, each focus of attention becomes an act of creation. Sustaining resentments, fears, and internal noise is equivalent to sending signals of disorder to the quantum field. Nurturing states of coherence, on the other hand, is like laying tracks so that reality moves in more fertile directions. Up to this point, you believed that life happened to you. But what if, in truth, it was constantly responding to what you vibrate? This inversion changes everything. The world is not just a stage, but a sensitive extension of your internal state. The quantum field is not distant. It is the very invisible clay that molds your daily experience. And that is why this video is not just reflection, but invitation. an invitation for you to perceive coherence as practice, not as a distant concept. An invitation for you to test in yourself the impact of aligning heart and mind, even if only for a few minutes, because theory is only confirmed in the body. The real is only revealed through experience. Now I want to propose something concrete. If this understanding resonated with you, like this video to strengthen this network of coherence we are building here, and write in the comments the phrase, "I choose to vibrate in alignment." These words are not just external declarations, they work as internal anchors, reminding you that reality can respond differently when we place ourselves in harmony. The idea that reality responds to the internal state may seem abstract until we find stories that echo this principle. An ancient Eastern narrative tells of a monk who decided to withdraw to the mountains in search of wisdom. He took no books, nor disciples, only the decision to remain in silence before the universe. At first, his mind stirred like a storm. Each memory was a thunderclap, each desire a gust of wind. But over time, his breathing became rhythmic, and his heart began to emit a constant rhythm. It is said that, in this state of coherence, wild animals began to approach the hut without fear. Birds landed near him, as if wanting to share the same field. Even the river's water seemed to flow more calmly beside where the monk sat. The nearby village began to notice that something invisible was happening there, and people started visiting that place just to remain a few minutes in silence with him. The curious thing is that no one reported hearing verbal teachings. The learning lay in the field emitted by his presence. This story, even if laden with mythical traits, conveys something fundamental. Coherence is not only a subjective experience, but a force that reorganizes entire environments. The monk did not control the birds, nor manipulate the river. He simply reached a state in which body, mind, and emotion pulsed in unison, and the world responded to that. The myth expresses in symbols what science today measures in experiments on cardiac coherence. Ordered fields influence not only the organism itself, but also the surrounding environment. In different cultures, we find similar echoes. Shamans describe that their main function is not to heal directly, but to align themselves to the point where the sick person can once again resonate with vital order. Ancient warriors believed that before going into battle, they needed to harmonize breathing and heart, so that the sword would be a natural extension of their movements. Poets spoke of states in which words flowed effortlessly, as if the universe were dictating verses through them. All these accounts point to the same core. Coherence is a state in which the human becomes a channel of something greater than himself. If we want to translate this into closer terms, we can think of an antenna. A misaligned antenna captures noise and distortions. A calibrated antenna receives clear signals. The human being in coherence becomes a precise antenna, capable of capturing subtle information and, at the same time, emitting waves that affect his reality. The monk of the mountains was a living antenna. His presence did not depend on speeches, because his frequency was already teaching. This antenna metaphor leads us to another reflection. If each individual is transmitter and receiver, we do not live in isolated realities, but in fields that intertwine. When a human being reaches coherence, he influences those around him, even silently. This phenomenon can be seen in daily life. A leader who enters an environment in a state of balance tends to affect the entire group. A mother who calms her own breathing calms the baby in her arms. These are echoes of the same dynamic. But there is also the other side of the archetype. The story of the monk reminds us that coherence requires discipline and surrender. It is not enough to wish. It is necessary to sustain the state, even in the face of inner storms. He did not reach that field because the world was calm, but because he learned not to get lost in the noise. Coherence is less a gift and more a constant tuning exercise. This symbolic dimension touches on something essential. Coherence is not measured only by electrodes or graphs, but by the impact it generates in the invisible fabric of relationships. The monk did not intend to attract disciples, but his vibration made him a beacon. This shows us that each person, upon reaching coherence, also becomes a point of reference for others. In silence, in presence, in vibration, we are all creators of atmospheres. The narrative in this sense is not just legend, it is an invitation to recognize that within us exists the same potential to alter fields. We may not make rivers change course or wild animals approach, but we can reorganize the situations around us, influence nearby people, open paths that once seemed closed. The archetype of the monk reminds us, the real responds to coherence more than to force. The story of the monk showed us that coherence is not a concept, but a state that transforms even the air around. The question that arises is how to cultivate this in daily life, amid obligations, noise, and pressures. The answer lies in simple but profound practices that train the body and mind to act as one. First of all, it is important to understand that coherence is not achieved by force, but by delicate attention. Like a gardener who does not pull the plants to make them grow faster, but creates the right conditions of light, water, and soil, we too create the internal conditions for alignment to flourish. This care begins with the rhythm of breathing. Close your eyes for a few moments and direct your awareness to the heart. Feel the movement of air entering and leaving the lungs, but let your attention rest in the chest region as if there lay the center of your universe. Inhale in 4 slow counts, hold gently for 2, and exhale in 6. Repeat this cycle a few times. Gradually, the heart and breathing begin to synchronize and a field of calm settles in. This simple exercise is already enough to begin the process of cardiac coherence. Now, add a layer of intention. Bring to mind an emotion that evokes expansion, gratitude, care, or even a memory of genuine connection with someone. Do not force anything, simply evoke what arises naturally. As you feel this emotion, direct it to the heart, as if each beat amplified it and sent it through the whole body. This combination of breathing rhythm and positive emotion creates ordered patterns that can be measured in physiology, but are also felt as immediate clarity. Then visualize that each cell of the body begins to vibrate at the same frequency. The mind ceases to compete with the heart and begins to listen to it. The body ceases to carry unnecessary tension and surrenders to the established rhythm. You are not creating something artificial. You are only revealing the order that already existed but was covered by layers of dispersion. In this state, try asking yourself a simple question. It can be something like, what is the next most coherent step for me now? Do not expect an immediate logical answer. Sometimes it will come as a sense of lightness in the face of a possibility, sometimes as intuition forming hours later. Coherence opens space for information from the field to be accessed in a less distorted way. It is interesting to realize that this exercise does not need to be long. 3 to 5 minutes can already produce noticeable effects. With regular practice, the body begins to recognize the path naturally, and entering coherence becomes increasingly faster. Over time, you do not practice only in isolated moments, but carry this state throughout the day, transforming conversations, decisions, and even small everyday gestures. We can also add a collective dimension. If you perform this exercise in a group, the field tends to intensify. Studies show that the coherence of several people in synchrony creates even more stable patterns, capable of influencing even physiological indicators of those nearby. In this sense, each individual practice is also a contribution to a greater field, as if each heart were an instrument strengthening the global orchestra. To make this more vivid, try now a final contemplation. Visualize your heart emitting concentric waves that expand beyond the body. They reach nearby people, cross walls, touch cities, and continue toward the horizon. With each breath, the field grows in amplitude, but remains ordered. You do not lose energy. On the contrary, you feel nourished, as if connected to an inexhaustible source. This is the power of coherence. The more it is shared, the stronger it becomes. This exercise, though simple, carries within it the synthesis of science and spirituality. Through science, we know that heart rate variability, breathing coherence, and the activation of positive emotions reorganize the nervous and hormonal system. Through spirituality, we understand that this state connects us to a greater intelligence that does not speak in words, but in vibrations. By uniting these two perspectives, we discover that coherence is not a distant theory, but a practice accessible to anyone willing to dedicate a few minutes of conscious presence. The coherence exercise does not end the moment the breath returns to its common rhythm. It extends, silent, like echoes that continue vibrating inside you. It is in this prolongation that we realize that the practice is not an isolated act, but a way of inhabiting the world. With each heartbeat aligned with the mind, reality organizes itself differently, as if receiving instructions from an invisible code. Coherence is, in essence, an art of presence. It does not mean escaping chaos, but sustaining clarity even in the midst of it. It is like walking through a noisy city without losing the internal beat, like keeping a lighthouse lit while the sea stirs. This state is not conquered once and for all. It is cultivated day after day until it becomes nature. And perhaps this is the greatest mystery. We are not speaking only of physiological techniques, nor of spiritual beliefs, but of an encounter between science and poetry, body and cosmos. Coherence does not ask you to understand everything with the mind, but to allow life to respond to your vibration. Not every answer comes in words. Some arrive as coincidences that multiply, as unexpected encounters, as paths that open where once there were only walls. If you have come this far, carry this perception with you. Reality is not an immovable block, but a field sensitive to your internal state. And each time you choose alignment, you also choose a more fertile world to manifest. Write in the comments, "I walk in coherence," so that I know you remained with me until the end of this video. And if this content resonated with you, subscribe to the channel and activate your presence in our community so that we can continue building together this space of discoveries and aligned vibrations.